Well, while he's doing that, we'll get started. Uh, I'm going to just our speaker today is John Wonnacott. He's the president of the Hearing Impairment Society, and he's going to talk to us about all things hearing today. So I will let him introduce himself. I will let we'll let him tell us how he came to this and whatever else he can inform us about speech about hearing loss and problems with that. So I will stay unmuted, but maybe if everybody else can mute themselves so there isn't any background noise. Okay. Uh, Larry, would you like, if questions come up, do you want people to ask them as they come up, or would you prefer they wait till the end?
I'm fine with people asking questions as they come up.
Okay, so if you can raise your hand, use the raise your hand function in Zoom, that's great. It's easier to see you. If not, do whatever you can. You can always put a question in the chat, and I'll watch that and try to call on you. Make sure you get your question answered. So with that, go ahead, Larry. We're eager to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'll try to talk to you while I'm getting my screen up to share and see if we can make that work.
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it too, but I'm trying to get to the presentation button.
That's next month.
Maybe we'll go over here. Okay. Oh, I know what I need to do. There we go. Okay. I hope everybody can see that. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the League of Women Voters and talk about healthcare and the element of healthcare that I want to emphasize, obviously, is what I know the most about, which is hearing loss. And I know that there are people on this call that know as much as I do, so I hope that it's interactive. Please be sure to ask questions whenever you have them. I think for context, it's helpful sometimes to let you know where I'm coming from and what the group is that I represent. The Hearing Loss Association of America is a national organization with local chapters. We are the Northwest Washington chapter. We basically cover the 4 counties in northwestern Washington, but we also have some members from Canada that come down, and anyone is welcome to join our meetings. We are dedicated to opening the world of communications to folks with hearing loss. We do that by providing information, education, support, and advocacy. I think our organizations are probably very similar in their goals in that respect. We have monthly in-person meetings, mainly because we're not technically competent enough to have hybrid meetings where we could have Zoom and in-person meetings. Because we're a support group, the in-person part is very important to what we do. But, and we found that when we tried to do a hybrid meeting, the technology elements of getting Zoom going tends to distract from the in-person part. So we just have gone to meetings the 3rd Saturday of every month here in Bellingham. And like you, we invite guest speakers. We share our own experiences, sometimes with panels from members. But mostly we bring in guest speakers to handle the education part and the information part of our mission. So I'm going to start by just briefly, since this is a presentation about hearing loss, I thought I'd I'd put up a slide here that, without describing it, because I'm not an audiologist and I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist. I'm just a guy with hearing loss. I think the purpose of this slide is to say our hearing mechanism in our body is very complicated. And when things are complicated, my experience is that there's more things that can go wrong. And we will talk about some of the things that go wrong with our hearing and how we might deal with some of those. Basically, the three parts of the ear are the outer ear, which is the part you can see, and it funnels the sound waves into the middle ear, and the eardrum takes those sound waves, and it acts much like a drum. If you think of the surface of a drum, when you hit it, it moves, and in the middle ear, there's these three bones, the smallest bones in your body, that transmit that movement from the eardrum into the inner ear, which is where the cochlea is. And inside that cochlea are 16,000, to start with, hair cells that stand up, much like, if you can imagine kelp moving in the ocean, kelp moving with the waves of the ocean. And that's the sound waves moving that kelp. And the kelp, where it's attached to what would be the seafloor, is in fact the cochlea. And there's a little switch down there. When that kelp moves, when the hair cell moves, that switch is activated and it sends a signal to the auditory nerve, which then takes that signal to the brain, and the brain somehow, don't ask me how, interprets that as, oh, that's a siren. Oh, that's a word. That's another noise. The brain can translate those electrical stimulus that's coming from the auditory nerve into sounds. And so that's kind of how we hear. I would point out one thing, and that is we're going to talk about balance and hearing loss. And the vestibular nerve here, the vestibular system is part of our balance system. So there is a relationship between hearing loss and balance in many cases. Not always, but sometimes. So with a complicated system like that, the question is, what things can impact it and cause it to not function at its full capacity? And for us, one of the number one factors is age. As we get older, those hair cells don't want to stand up anymore. And once they fall over, it's much like a forest being hit by a windstorm. Trees fall over. And they fall over, in our case, because of age. In another case, they fall over because of very loud noise exposure, sometimes not even very loud, just prolonged noise exposure. This is one cause of concern that I have for our younger generation coming along, is being exposed to loud noises over time unquestionably affects hearing in the longer term. So when I see young people going to concerts, no hearing protection, when I look at an audience at a football game, for example, the Seahawks game, which is so loud, and there are young people there with no hearing protection, I know that in the future, some of those people are going to have hearing loss because of that. And they won't link the two, but loud noise exposure is a major cause of hearing loss. As the human genome has become programmed and more knowledge is gained about it, we're finding that genetics plays a larger role in hearing loss than we originally thought. Medications can destroy hearing. Joe was at a meeting this weekend where one of our members who's written a reference manual for physicians and for us about medications. It's 1,600 pages long, listing all the medications that can have ototoxic effect. Oto meaning hearing, toxic, we know what that means. So the real message that we can take from that meeting and the existence of ototoxic medications is that when a physician prescribes a medication to us, it's a good idea to ask, does this medication have any ototoxic impacts? Or in plain language, is this likely to affect my ability to hear? Doctors are surprisingly unaware of many of these effects. So asking the question is really the key point. Asking your doctor so that they will look at it, they will research it a little bit. Also, one thing that I learned at this meeting, and this is, I'm sure much like your meetings, one of the great things about it is learning new things, is that the standard dosage for prescriptions is based upon the profile of a 165-pound male. So if you are not a 165-pound male, it may be a good idea to ask your doctor, is this the right dosage for me? Not a 165-pound male. I did not realize that that was the baseline. Other factors, diabetes is obviously can be linked to hearing loss, smoking, hypertension, and in my case, I lost my hearing from Meniere's disease. So there are medical conditions, diseases that can destroy your hearing. I started in my 20s. I had a very, my first experience was with vertigo. My desk at my job started spinning very rapidly. It turns out I had Meniere's disease. I was diagnosed with Meniere's disease in my left ear. Eventually, I got it on my right side as well. Most people that get Meniere's disease only get it single-sided. I can't win the lottery, but I won. I got bilateral Meniere's disease. So that was my lucky stroke. In my case, I don't wear hearing aids. I don't know if you can see, but I wear bilateral cochlear implants. So I reached the stage where I was completely deaf in my left ear. Hearing aids didn't do any good for decades. So I didn't wear anything on that side. I wore a hearing aid on my right side because I still had hearing, but it was going too. So initially, I got about 9 years ago, I got a cochlear implant on my left side. And then 3 years ago, I went bilateral and got out of my right side. So I hear a little differently than somebody who uses hearing aids, but I have the same kind of life experience with dealing with hearing loss. How do we know when someone we're talking to might have hearing loss? I think it's important. Individually, sometimes people don't realize they're losing their hearing, particularly age-related hearing loss, because it happens gradually. There is such a thing as sudden hearing loss, where people wake up one morning and their hearing is gone. But most of the time, it is a gradual thing, and some people don't realize that the reason they continue to turn their head or cup their ear or ask us to repeat is because they've got hearing loss. And that's important information for us when we're dealing with people that have hearing loss. I've recognized it in some friends who I used to participate in men's groups with, and over time they stopped coming. And I finally would approach them and say, can you tell me why you're not participating anymore? And when we could have a quiet conversation, it turned out that they were really struggling to hear in the group. They felt excluded. They didn't felt like they weren't part of the group because they couldn't participate in the conversation. So that is a sign that that person really could benefit from doing something about their hearing loss. Another fact, I've learned these things over the years that I never thought about before. And one was a gentleman that I know in the hearing loss community was giving a speech, and he was asked by the audience, I have a sister-in-law that just talks all the time. Do you think that that could be related to hearing loss? And I was surprised by his answer. His answer was absolutely. People who are conversation dominant sometimes do it because when they're talking, they don't have to listen. And when you have hearing loss and it's not treated, listening is exhausting. So you try not to do it. The only way to really know about hearing loss, and if one has it, is to get a hearing evaluation from an audiologist or a hearing instrument specialist. Their designation is HIS. I put evaluation in bold here because we're all accustomed to trying to pass tests. So if I call it a hearing test, then the initial reaction is, I want to pass this test. Or if I can't pass it, I'm going to be disappointed. This is not what a hearing evaluation is. A hearing evaluation is providing information about your current state of hearing. It's not a test. You can't fail. You can't pass. It's just not a test. So I try very hard not to call it hearing tests. It's a hearing evaluation. Hearing is not like glasses. Because it happens gradually, sometimes we don't recognize what's going on and why we're struggling in certain situations. And going to an audiologist is the best trained source you can go to for information about your hearing. In Bellingham, we are incredibly blessed to have a resource that is not available in any other community in the state of Washington. And that's a Doctor of Audiology program, which Western Washington University has. As far as I know, it's the only terminal degree program that they have. It is a 4-year postgraduate program. So this is not trivial that what these students are going through. In Washington State, in order to newly register as an audiologist, you must have a Doctor of Audiology degree. Some audiologists are grandfathered in. If they had been practicing with a master's degree before this regulation passed, which was, I'm thinking 5 or 6 years ago, then they're grandfathered in as audiologists. But any new audiologist needs to have this 4-year advanced degree. And at Western Washington, they have a hearing clinic, which is state of the art, is absolutely the nicest clinic I've ever been in. And believe me, I've been in a lot of them. That service is first class. Generally speaking, you're seen by 2 students and a professor who's supervising the students. It's free. It's only donation based. So there's no concern about payment. The only concern is it's hard to get in. So you have to book an appointment in advance. But I highly recommend going to Western for a hearing evaluation. When you get a hearing evaluation, the result is what's called an audiogram. And a good audiologist will sit down and explain your audiogram to you. I guess I didn't have good audiologists because it was 30 years before anybody ever went over my audiogram with me. So an audiogram basically will give you two lines. In this chart, the line with the circles is your right ear, and the line with the X's is your left ear. Across the top, we have frequency. Sound waves occur at different frequencies. And along the vertical axis, we have volume. This is a little unusual because normally on the vertical axis, things go up as you go up the axis. This one, it goes down. The sound gets louder as we go down. So we hear everything above these lines. We do not hear, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I always say that wrong. What we don't hear is up here, okay? And I'm going to show you, this is high frequency hearing loss. As the frequency goes up, we need to turn the sound up in order to hear it. And the sound is going up as we're going down. This is typical age-related hearing loss. It's also typical in that it is bilateral. This person has bilateral hearing loss, meaning both ears, and it is symmetrical. The lines are pretty much the same. That's normal hearing loss. Why does it matter? It matters because when we try to comprehend speech, vowels and consonants appear at different frequencies. So, and vowels don't really contain any information in speech. So hearing vowels, if I gave you a sentence with just vowels, you would not know what it meant. But if I gave you a sentence with just consonants, you would probably know what it meant. Well, the problem then is that we're not hearing, when we have these high frequency hearing loss, we're not hearing a lot of very important consonants. So I label it as hearing versus comprehension. I hear you, I know you're talking, but I don't understand what you're saying because I'm not getting these consonants. Again, I went to audiologists for 40 years. Nobody ever told me about this. This is what belonging to groups that focus on hearing loss or any other issue, you get a different understanding of the problems that you're dealing with. So
Before you go to that slide, maybe I saw a question in the chat that kind of pertained to that. Is anything known about hearing loss accompanied by distortion of sound? This person hears high notes, flats, rasping noises, such as the rattling of a paper bag, very loud.
Is anything known about it? Yes. The answer to that is yes. It is at a technical level where I can't really address it other than to say that I know people who have that problem. There are people who have a problem where loud noises causes their hearing to shut down. So there's all kinds of different ways that hearing loss can express itself. And that is the value of going to someplace like Western or an audiologist where they can look at your audiogram, and when you can explain what is going on with your hearing situation, and they can give you those answers. But the answer is yes. There are other people that have that problem.
Thank you.
And there must be, because there's a lot of people that have hearing loss. That's kind of the summary of this side of incidence. 60 million people over the age of 12. For us, and I think you could look at the third bullet, 40% of the population over age 75. I went to my cardiologist the other day, and where you check in, they have several stations where you can check in, and the people working there are behind plexiglass, and they're wearing masks, by the way. But the people checking in are standing next to each other, and so maybe there's 4 conversations going on at the same time. I tell my family all the time, if there's one conversation, I've got a good chance of understanding it. If there's 2 conversations at the same time, I'm not going to get either one of them. So when there's 4 conversations, forget about it. I actually did tell the physician's assistant that I saw about it, and they may be actually willing to do something. I don't know. We'll see. 20% of the world's population is estimated to have significant hearing loss. So the bad news is a lot of people. The good news is it's a huge market. So from a business perspective, there are a lot of companies starting to address the hearing market, and that means there's going to be innovation. But I want to make the point here that as I go forward and talk about impacts of hearing loss, I'm really talking about people who don't do anything about their hearing loss. Hearing loss is manageable. Can we make your hearing perfect again? No, do not have that expectation. But can we relieve the stress, and can we avoid some of these risks of untreated hearing loss? So I have put untreated in a different color here because I want to emphasize that you can do something about hearing loss. It doesn't have to you don't have to just suffer from it. The number one item in my world, what worries me more than, I said I went to a cardiologist, so I don't worry too much about a heart attack. If it happens, it happens. But cognitive decline is what scares me. I want to avoid that at all. I do everything I can to avoid that. So why cognitive decline? I'm going to skip ahead for a side here and show you what the theory is, the linkage between hearing loss, and this slide uses dementia. I stole that from Island Audiology. I would use cognitive decline because there are things that can happen short of dementia that we still don't want to have happen to us. And the idea is with hearing loss, the cognitive load is increased because listening takes so much effort that when I was working after a day working, I was exhausted. Just if I was in meetings all day, or heaven forbid, if I had to go to a conference and try to make connections and network during a coffee break when there's 80 people standing out in a hotel meeting room lobby talking all at the same time, I had no chance of hearing what was going on. The cognitive load was just so great that it led to social isolation. I didn't want to go. If I came home and Elizabeth said, Tom and Sandy are having a party tonight, do you want to go? No, I do not want to go. I don't have any interest because I know I'm not going to hear and I'm exhausted. When you isolate socially, you can have atrophy of some areas of the brain. So that is one theory behind the linkage between hearing loss and cognitive decline. I mentioned when we were looking at how we hear the vestibular system. The vestibular system basically have three balance systems in the body. You have your ears, the vestibular system, you have your eyes, and you have your muscles and bones, primarily feet and ankles, which send signals to your brain of how you're oriented in space. Well, I don't have really a vestibular system anymore because that's what Meniere's attacks. And once you have cochlear implants, that's compromised greatly. So I don't go out. If you ask me, would you like to go on a walk on the beach after sunset? My answer would be absolutely not, because I'm afraid I'm going to fall. So increased risk of falls. I think we all know that as we get older, if you fall, and if you have repeated falls, your life expectancy is significantly impacted. So that is a big one. People with hearing loss in their jobs have lower earnings over their lifetime because they're not hearing what the boss asked them to do. If you don't hear what the assignment is, it's pretty hard to do it. So it's very simple. Anxiety and depression, fatigue, I've talked about those. I think for me, that was a really, really big part of it. It was just exhausting to try to listen throughout the workday. As a consequence, family and social relationships get strained. What we talk about at the hearing loss group is if one person in the family has hearing loss, the family has hearing loss. It's not limited to just the person with hearing loss. So I tell people who don't want to wear hearing aids because they think it makes them look old that they're being selfish, that it's really not about you, it's about your family. So sometimes that's received, sometimes it's not, but we give it a go. All right. So we're back here to talking about untreated hearing loss again. And that really is my message is take charge. If you know people that have hearing loss, they can take charge of it. They don't have to just accept it. So lost productivity, the stats show that people with hearing loss earn roughly $12,000 a year less than people with normal hearing. The quality of life costs, I mean, I don't know how these get estimated. I just found them and they're huge. I don't know if they're accurate or not, but I know that the costs are very large. So that says to me that as a society, there's benefit to making some social commitment, some commitments as a society to treating hearing loss. And that's going to be kind of the ask here when we get to the end is, well, what can we do about these barriers to treatment? And is there anything we can do together to work on these barriers? And these are what I think the barriers are. First is just, the denial is not a river. It's real. People deny that they need hearing. I will admit that most of the time, the people that I run into that deny it are older males. I can't tell you how many older gentlemen that I've met and I ask them about their hearing aids and they tell me without knowing what they don't know this term, they don't use the term, but they have ITD hearing aids in the drawer. They're in their dresser drawer. They don't work in the dresser drawer. Glasses don't work in the dresser drawer. But I mean, I just cannot tell you how many people admit to me, yeah, well, I have them. I didn't like them. They were too loud, so I just put them away. I don't wear them. Okay. That is, I was going to search for an image of money in a trash can along with your hearing aids, because hearing aids are expensive. And it's like putting money in a trash can. You might as well just throw it away. Even what are called over-the-counter hearing aids, which are relatively new, they've been approved. They are for mild to moderate hearing loss. They're not for somebody like me, even before I got the CIs. They're for people who have a little bit of hearing loss, but they still cost $1,000 to $2,000 for a pair of them. And that's expensive. Prescription aids, which you would get from an audiologist or from a hearing instrument specialist, run $3,000 to $8,000 for a pair of hearing aids. That's extremely expensive. Then you get to the top of the mountain, and it's cochlear implants. And each one of these costs $50,000. Now, before you think, oh, geez, it must be pretty good if he can afford $100,000 on his head, Medicare covers cochlear implants. They are considered essential medical equipment because my speech comprehension had to be below 60% before I would qualify for a cochlear implant. There's no qualifications here in the hearing aid realm. So Medicare will pay for implants, but you don't want to get an implant unless you really need one. So the other reasons, and if people have vanity about hearing aids, which can go, if you look at some of these hearing aids, they're very small. You can't, it's very difficult to see. The only people who worry about vanity are people that think other people think they know they wear hearing aids. The only people who recognize someone who wears hearing aids are other people that wear hearing aids. Because we look, we know, but other people don't know. For a while, when I was deaf in my left ear and wearing a hearing aid in my right, my wife and I decided, well, let's get a real big hearing aid so people can see it and they'll know that you are hard of hearing. And I did. Two things happened. Number one, they talked to my ear where I didn't hear at all. Or number two, they never saw it. And so we thought we were making a display and people would recognize it. Nobody looks. Nobody asks. People don't even ask me, what are those things on the side of your head? It just doesn't happen. So vanity is a huge one. People think it's going to make them look old. My response to that is, no, what makes you look old is not participating in the conversation because you can't hear. That makes you look old. Wearing a hearing aid, these hearing aids you can't see, even the behind the ear hearing aids, they're very difficult to see, and they're so commonplace that people don't notice. Impatience, it takes time to adjust. Your brain is getting the signal, as we talked about on the how we hear slide. It takes time for the brain to adjust to new signals. 60 days is my rule of thumb. When somebody gets new hearing aids, they need to wear them every day for as long as possible so that their brain can adjust. But the brain will adjust. It's a remarkable organ and it will adjust. When I got my first cochlear implant, it sounded like somebody put a mechanical Donald Duck in my head. I'm serious. If you could imagine what that sounds like, that's what this sounded like. Now it sounds completely normal because my brain adjusted. I gave it time. I did work. I did much like if you got a knee replaced or a hip replaced, you'd do physical therapy. I did auditory therapy. I learned how to listen. And that takes a lot of work, but it works. It's just not necessarily easy. So impatience, you got to give it time. You got to give your brain time to adjust. And then technology, all of these hearing aids are digital now. They're programmable. They come with accessories. I have what's called a TV streamer. So I can Bluetooth the TV sound directly to my devices, and you could do it to any one of these hearing aids. And the TV is on mute, but I hear it perfectly. And so there's that. There are microphones, very small little microphones that can be used remotely. So when we're in the car, rather than getting just road noise, I can give this to my wife and she can clip it to her lapel and she's talking right in my ears. I'm hearing perfectly. So but you have to be comfortable with technology, and that frightens some people.
Maybe before you go to the next slide, there was a question about the cost estimates on that previous slide.
Right.
The person was wondering whether those cost estimates were for one hearing aid or for two.
They're for most of the time, hearing loss is bilateral and symmetrical. So these are two, except the cochlear implant. Cochlear implant is singular. Most people don't do bilateral cochlear implants, but because they'll just rely on one. But these are for a pair of hearing aids.
And then there was another question about Meniere's disease. Do you want to take that now, or would you want to take that later?
No, what do we got?
If Meniere's disease is due to buildup of inner ear endolymph, how do cochlear implants help?
That's a good question. It seems, my understanding is that Meniere's disease is an imbalance in the fluid between two parts of the ear. And it doesn't, cochlear implants don't help with the other symptoms of Meniere's disease. But Meniere's disease tends to burn out after 10 years or so. So I no longer get vertigo. And it's not because of my implants, it's because the Meniere's part burned out, according to my doctor. So what the implant does, it allows me to hear. The Meniere's disease destroyed my hearing, so I was deaf, but I was still getting vertigo and tinnitus. So tinnitus is ringing in the ears. It doesn't come from your ears. I'm proof of that. I'm deaf when I take my devices off, but I have tinnitus. And it's my brain thinking that it's hearing sounds, or there are stray impulses coming from the auditory nerve that my brain is picking up. Nobody's really sure exactly what's happening, but they know it's not sound coming through my ears. So the short answer is the cochlear implant doesn't stop some of the symptoms of Meniere's disease, namely vertigo, but it will restore the hearing.
Thank you.
Absolutely, that's a good question. All right, let's catch up here. So switching here to ideas, I think we've got these costs and what prevents treatment. And at the end, I'd like to talk about how we can address some of these barriers together. But here's some ideas about tips on how to communicate with people that either have hearing loss or, and then as a person with hearing loss, how can you better manage your communications? So when you're speaking to someone that you know has hearing loss, the first thing to do is to get their attention. If you're walking behind someone who has hearing loss and you start talking, they're probably not going to pick up on it because they don't know you're talking to them, and they need to really concentrate when you're talking to them. So get their attention, face them, make your lips visible if possible, because someone with hearing loss, whether they know it or not, is using speech reading. They're looking at your lips to help them understand what you're saying. And that is very important to us. It's why during the pandemic, when people were wearing masks, it was exceptionally difficult for us. And I bet it was difficult for some of you, even though you have good hearing, because you speech read too. You just don't think that's what you're doing. We also use anticipation in conversations. We're anticipating where the conversation's going. So if someone suddenly changes the subject, there's a good probability we're going to lose it because we were going down this path and all of a sudden the conversation went over there and we can't follow it. So if you're going to change the subject and you know the person you're talking to is hard of hearing, you might say something like, well, changing the subject now. And then they'll say, okay, now I got to pay attention because the subject's different. Yelling doesn't help. Saying it louder doesn't help. We're hearing you, we're just not understanding you. So rephrase rather than yell or give up. Sometimes I'll say, well, what did she say? And they'll say, well, never mind. It's like, well, please don't dismiss me like that. I really want to know what that person said. And it's pretty dismissive to say, well, never mind. Rephrase it. Try different words. We may catch it better. As someone with hearing loss, what's my responsibility? Well, my responsibility is to admit that I have hearing loss and to let people know, hey, I need to go someplace else to have this conversation because I'm having a really difficult time understanding you. We need to express our hearing aids needs. We need to manage the environment. Go to a different room. Say to the person, could we have this conversation over where it's a little bit more quiet so I can hear you better? And people are incredibly accommodating when you ask. Bluffing is a major problem for people with hearing loss. They pretend that they heard and they didn't, and they I used to do this all the time. And my wife would say to me, they didn't ask that question. They asked something else. But I gave them an answer to a question that wasn't asked. Um, Plan ahead when we have a couple that says, let's go out to dinner. We say, okay, but Larry's got hearing loss. We really need to try to find a quiet place. Do you know any restaurants that you think are quiet? We'll make some suggestions. There's actually an app that you can use that is, it's called Soundprint, which measures the sound in certain restaurants. So you can tell ahead of time if it's really noisy. And then a part of planning ahead is using assistive devices, like the microphone I was talking about. That's a great one in restaurants to use. There's different kinds of ways you can plan so that you can hear better. And that's really our responsibility. So how can we work together? What can we do to make some of these barriers less significant? From a personal perspective, I think it comes down to education and support. Educating people about hearing loss, educating them about the devices and techniques that are available to lessen their stress is very important. For me, when I went to my first hearing loss group meeting, which was maybe 8 or 9 years ago, after 40 or 50 years of living with hearing loss, I realized here's a room full of people just like me. And that is really powerful when you have a disability. But from a community and a political standpoint, and here's where we like to, we, the hearing loss group, as a state organization, a national organization, and our local chapters, and we work to try to get legislation to improve communications access. Just like wheelchair ramps are important, what are called assisted listening systems are important to us, just like wheelchair ramps are to people that are in wheelchairs. When we go to the Mount Baker Theater, we should be able to hear just like everybody else. But there's reasons, economic reasons, and regulatory reasons that we are not able to do that to the level that we should. One idea is that Medicare does not cover hearing aids. It should, in our opinion. We, of course, are slightly biased, but to us, it's like covering any other medical device. If you have a significant enough hearing loss that you need hearing aids, you should get financial assistance in getting those aids. You shouldn't have to go without because you don't have the money. 70%, by some estimates, 70% of the employees in Washington State, people who have jobs, are covered by self-funded medical plans. In other words, the corporations do the insurance plan. I won't even say most because I don't know that. Many of those plans do not cover hearing access. They should. That is something that those plans should be required to cover. We have 2 existing sets of regulation. Nationally, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, and in Washington, we have the Washington Law Against Discrimination that require public venues to provide communications access. The problem is that those systems are expensive, they are difficult to install, in some cases, and they're difficult to maintain. Staff of the venue needs to be trained, and those things don't happen. So when we go to a venue, we say, do you have an assisted listening system? The symbol here is for let me get that. This symbol here represents what's called a telecoil. It's a circuit in hearing devices that enables us. It was invented actually for telephones. That's why the name is telecoil. And it activates a circuit in our hearing aids, which helps us hear in those environments where there's what's called a loop installed. Loops require a wire around the space. They require an amplifier. They can have electromagnetic interference. There's lots of things that can go wrong, but they require training and they require maintenance. So all of that translates to expense for the venue. And obviously venues don't want to spend a lot of money. And there could be ways that we could help venues with the costs. So more assisted listening systems, support for enforcing the existing regulations that are out there. There's also in Washington State a law that says if you are a public, your venue is accessible to the public, let's say a sports bar, and you have TVs, that the captions on those TVs need to be turned on. Well, the next time you go in a restaurant that has TVs, look and see if the captions are on. And I'd be able to take the side, I'd be willing to take the side of the bet that says they're not on, because usually they're not. And it's just a law that's not enforced because there's not awareness of it. So it would be very helpful if we could get the existing regulations enforced, and we could get consideration if we go back to talking about the costs of untreated hearing loss, if we could get a recognition that some of these systems will pay for themselves if we make them available, but we're not making them available. So that is, that's kind of the ask. Is from a legislative perspective, we'll be working on some issues. I've been told that this year the word is out. You probably know more about this than I do. This year the word is out. We can talk about anything you want to talk about, but if it costs money, it's not happening. So I don't know what we'll be able to get done this year, but we certainly are going to be expressing our voice, and we always appreciate any support that we can get for hearing access kinds of issues. Thanks for the time, and if you've got any other questions, please let me know now or later. You can go to our website, which is hearingloss-nwwa.org, and use the info link there and shoot me a question and I'll get back to you.
There was a question that just popped up. Where do you have your meetings?
We have our meetings at Christ the Servant Lutheran Church on Lakeway. It's right across from the Bayview Cemetery on Lakeway. And it's on the third Saturday of the month. We usually start getting together around 9:30 in the morning, have some coffee and some treats, and then the meeting runs from around 10 until noon.
If you don't have any more slides to show, maybe if you took that down, then we could see everybody.
That's what I'm
and
doing.
See people who raise their hand, or either their physical hand or raise their Zoom hand.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, I see Kim.
Good morning, Larry. Thank you so much for such an interesting topic and for your long history with this topic, too. I have a 30-year-old son, or 33 now, who suffered complete hearing loss in one ear due to a bad fall. Um, and so he's totally deaf now in his right ear. And would you recommend that clinic up at Western for an evaluation? He's just written off. He knows that the only thing that could possibly help him is a cochlear implant. But he's just, as a young man, he's just totally discounted that. He doesn't want to be an old man yet. But I'm wondering if it wouldn't be of benefit to him sooner rather than later.
Well, yes is the answer. I think Western would be one place. Um, he could also, is he in Bellingham?
He is.
The only surgeon in Bellingham that does cochlear implants is Dr. David Olson at Bellingham ENT. And Dr. Olson could evaluate him also. And I would just say to him this, does he like music?
Oh, yeah.
Would he like to hear in stereo? I'm serious. It is, I can't tell you the difference listening to music has made for me. I had so many cars in my life that the radio was never turned on. That now it's never turned off, but it's all Bluetooth. And they're actually working on a fully implantable cochlear implant. So maybe if he starts thinking about it now, by the time that is perfected, and that may be 3 to 5 years, but it won't be forever. And again, people just don't care that you've got something on the side of your head. First of all, I wear a hat most of the time. So the only thing they see is like a hearing aid. It's behind my ear. They see this part, but they don't see this part because I've got a hat on it.
Yeah.
And he's probably got hair. Imagine. So I would just say to him, think about it. Think about how much fuller your life could be if you could hear in stereo.
Well, or at least do the research, know what's out there rather than just discount it.
Yeah, I'm happy. Also, the research shows the longer you wait to get a CI, the less effective they are.
Hmm.
So he might want to consider sooner rather than later.
Well, that's what I was wondering. So thank you for that. That'll be good ammunition for me.
Julia, I see your hand up.
Yes, I have a couple of questions and also some observations, but I'll try to be brief. As I was listening to Larry, I think he was great. I'm so glad that we were able to have him as our guest today. But I thought about the history of this group, and I think it's about 10 years ago that we started this health group with the local chapter of League of Women Voters. And I know that 10 years ago, I would not have tried to be getting closer to the PC here, or depending on the text that it was, because I didn't need to. So my observation is how much my hearing has changed, and I've had yeah, many difficulties with hearing aids, etc. So that's just an observation of 10 years of this group and the difficulties with my hearing. The other observation I have is I go to the symphony, and before the symphony starts, there is a lecture. And I really like going to the lecture because it makes the performance a richer experience. The last time I sat at the lecture, I couldn't hear a damn thing. And so I was not aware of that I could ask, for assistance. And thank you, Larry. I will be asking, for assistance, next time I go to the symphony, because I was in the third row and I didn't know what was going on. Anyway, now I have a question. I wanted to ask Larry, do you see a time in the future where manufacturers of hearing aids would use folks that actually wear hearing aids in the design and operation of new hearing aids? Personally, I find that due to difficulty with coordination in my fingers from having multiple sclerosis, but also age, I have a terrible time getting a hearing aid to stay in my ears. So that's my question. Do you think they'll ever come to us and ask us, how can we improve on that?
Boy, I wish, Joe. I think that you've hit upon an issue that's not discussed very often, and that is the slide I had showing all the various hearing aids. The race seems to be who can make the smallest, least visible aid, rather than who can make the easiest to use aid. And they ignore the fact that many of us are older, we have dexterity issues. Some of us have big fingers, and it just doesn't, those little aids are too hard to use. A good audiologist will compensate and will say, I don't think you should buy that aid because of these issues, and they'll direct you to a different form factor. But I think that the vanity issue is so large for the manufacturers that they tend to keep looking for smaller, less visible solutions rather than solutions that work for us with some dexterity issues.
Thank you.
Julia, did you have something else to say, Joe? Did I cut you off?
One more time.
Did I cut you off?
No.
Okay. Julia.
I just want to thank you also, Larry. This has been a great presentation and I really appreciate it. I do live with someone who's hearing impaired, and you reminded me to be a little bit more patient at times, because I have used the phrase, never mind, and because it is frustrating. But I also appreciate the fact that the onus is also on the person who is hearing impaired to take some steps. So I appreciated that. But my big question is, do you ever go places to speak with populations, specifically the older population who's more greatly affected? Like, have you given presentations at the senior centers or anything like that? Because your presentation is so great. And I think a lot of people maybe don't have the information they need. And being hearing impaired is so isolating, as you've already talked about in your presentation. And it's so important to have that access. So I'm just wondering if you do that. And to Joe's point, again, living with someone who is older and hearing impaired, it is extremely difficult. I take care of the hearing aids because he has big fingers, he has tremors. And so I'm the one who has to take care of them. And I always know when we need to change things or clean them because, I live with him and I could tell. So, but if he had to do that on his own, it would be extremely difficult. Yes, there's places you could go to have that done, but that's driving the car, probably paying a fee. And so I agree with Joe greatly that oftentimes in designs, they don't take into account the user. And that's my biggest pet peeve. And I've told the audiologists that they need to make hearing aids more easy for the person wearing them to service them because the pieces are so tiny and I have small hands and it's still so hard to change the parts that you need to when they get clogged and so forth. So that is a very relevant point. And I think that's a very important aspect I don't know how we can help with that, but get that to the manufacturers. And that's really true for a lot of things. As a healthcare professional, at pumps that they make for diabetic people with diabetics, some of those are not user friendly either. So there's a long list of that where I think that's applicable, but I would like to know your thoughts on that, the education piece going into senior centers and how we give feedback to some of the manufacturers.
Yes, we do go to the senior centers. I speak whenever whenever I can at senior centers. What I find is the people that come to those presentations are people that already have hearing aids because they think like they're going to be able to hear. The people who are struggling are isolating socially and don't come to those meetings because they're afraid they're not going to be able to hear. So it's difficult to get to those folks. And if any of you are members of groups that you think would benefit from this kind of discussion, I am more than happy to show up and talk to those groups. So please, just like I think Joe suggested that I might talk to this group, please suggest. I love it. That's exactly what we want to do. As far as the manufacturers, one thing that they are moving to are rechargeable aids. So rather than have to take the battery out and change the battery, you just put the aids in a charger each night. The problem, of course, is when the aids are in the chargers, you don't hear. When I take these off at night, I am deaf. I happen to have a wife who hears very well, so that's okay for me. But if I was living alone, I would have to find a way to hear at night because I wouldn't be comfortable by myself being deaf. And this is kind of ironic, but the Consumer Product Safety Board decided, and this is a tragic event, but there was a young girl who got a hold of a package of hearing aid batteries and ingested them and died. And so they have made the packaging now for hearing aid batteries such that we can't get in them. People have to take these huge shears, open the package, and then they take all the batteries out at once, and the batteries can drain if they start touching each other. So they made the matter worse. But that's just kind of an aside. The answer is if the dexterity issue partly can be solved by using rechargeable hearing aids, because you're putting the whole aid in a charger rather than changing these tiny little batteries.
And he has, it's my husband I'm referring to, he does have rechargeable hearing aids, but there's a little piece within that device that can get clogged. And the tool that you use to replace that is so small.
Yeah.
If you're not only vision impaired, but also have essential tremors or something like that, there's no way he could do it on his own. So it's very frustrating to know that there's many people out there that don't have a wife or a partner or someone who can do it for them and maybe no means to get to the place to help them. It's a real disservice. So they throw them in the door and forget about them.
That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens.
Are you able to comment at all on some of the controversy that I know was present about at least maybe 10 or 15 years ago regarding the cochlear implants for people who were deaf? During internship, I was doing some evaluations related to that, and there was a community consensus among some people that if you were deaf, you were no longer part of the deaf community if you had a cochlear implant. Is that still true?
There is there is a distinct difference between the deaf community and hard of hearing. The deaf community really is a community. They have a bond that we don't have as hard of hearing people. And some people in that community view cochlear implants as a statement that they are somehow lesser because they have not gotten them and have decided to be deaf. I try to bridge that, but it's just a difference in the communities. I understand that how they could say, they could look at me and say, well, you think that I'm somehow I'm not being proactive or because I remain deaf, and I that's a statement that's negative about me, and that's not the statement I'm trying to make. I just I grew up with hearing. Many of them have not. Okay, I became deaf as an adult. So many of the deaf community were born that way and have learned that that's their life and that's their culture. And I think that's wonderful. They have a wonderful culture. But yes, I mean, there is that difference between the two communities, and it still exists. Um, I, I try to bridge it, but I really don't have a lot of interaction with the deaf community because it's unique. Um, what we're finding, I mean, now there are hearing tests for newborns. So parents, if a child is born deaf, depending on the reason for that, parents sometimes have a choice. You can do a cochlear implant, or the child can remain deaf, and that's a parental choice that they can make depending on how they want that child to be raised. So that I can't. Again, I don't have much interaction with that community. I'd like to, but it's they view us as different, and um, we just don't cross paths that often.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Sherry.
My chat dropped off, or my anyway. So if you have a hearing test up at Western, they do not supply I mean, you don't buy your hearing aids up there. I assume you go to a local, like Costco or the special hearing places. Do you like looking at Costco? They're so much cheaper than other places.
Right.
Would you recommend them or not? Or do you have any recommendations?
Here's what I say. First of all, my understanding is that you can buy hearing aids through Western if you want it. And Western also runs a program that we support called the Hearing Aid Bank. So when we have a member who buys new hearing aids, they can donate their old hearing aids. We take them to Western. The students refurbish those hearing aids, and then people who can't afford hearing aids can get them through the hearing aid bank on an ability to pay basis. So that's really a great service that they offer, and it's kind of under publicized, but it's available, number one. Number two, with respect to Costco, I get asked about this a lot, and we have many members who buy their hearing aids at Costco. I differentiate, because I'm a business guy, two different models of hearing aid resellers. One is a sales model, and the other is a care model. The sales model is Costco, their volume. They want to sell a lot of hearing aids. They have to sell a lot of hearing aids, and they do sell a lot of hearing aids. But their staff members generally are not audiologists. They're hearing instrument specialists. It is, how do I put this? I personally don't think they take the time to look at the whole picture for their patients. What is the lifestyle? What do you like to do? What do you need in terms of hearing? Do you need some of these accessories? Can I teach you how to use these accessories? That's not their model. That's the audiologist model, and that's my preferred model. I feel like I need somebody who has some empathy with what I'm going through on a daily basis. And I don't mean this to be too critical, but I've gone to Costco and I've said, look, there's this device, it's called a counter loop. And it teaches people, if I have my telecoils on, the person behind the counter is speaking into a microphone, which they can't even see, but it's going directly to my ears. And I'm hearing perfectly because all the other sound is blocked out. And I said, first of all, the law says they have to inform their consumers about telecoil availability. They don't have to buy it, but they have to be told about it, that it exists. Well, what better way to tell them about it than to have something right there and demonstrate it? And they won't do it. They won't even, and a counter loop costs less than $100. It's not expensive. It would be easy to do, but they don't do it. And obviously it frustrates me, or I wouldn't be bringing it up. I'm sorry, I don't mean to take it out on you, but it does frustrate me because it's easy. And as opposed to the audiologists that I go to, who number one has hearing loss, that's a big step up for me. And number two has a counter loop, knows and will teach me how to use it on my devices. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for full service, hold my hand a little bit, show me how to use this stuff, make me comfortable that I know how to activate my telecoil circuit, and I know how to go to Bluetooth, and I know how to pair a Bluetooth device with my hearing devices and my iPhone. That is the level of care that I think makes hearing aids worth the cost.
Julia, I see you have your hand up. I think you might be the last question because
Yeah,
it's
just
now 11:30, and then
I'll just be real brief.
yeah.
Just to follow up, Larry, because we've been down the Costco road several times, and I concur 100% with you, which then we switched to an audiologist, and that was the way you articulated that was perfect. Sale versus care. Love that. But my question is, with the telecoil, do you know, is that automatically built into the newer models of hearing aids, the digital? And then the when you were speaking is so cheap to purchase, is that on the consumer or is that the business that has to buy that, and then the hearing aid is already ready to accept that technology? I don't know if I'm being very clear, but
Well, the telecoil is a small circuit that needs to be in the hearing aid. So
Oh,
it's something that that's why it needs to be disclosed
I
by the
see.
radiologist or Costco. They're supposed to, you sign a sheet that says you've been told about telecoils,
Hmm.
whether you have or not. And
Okay.
they don't cost very much. Uh,
Yeah.
it might cost $20 to
Oh,
add to the cost of the hearing aid,
okay.
but they take up a little space. So
Ah,
the tiniest hearing aids, it's difficult to have a telecoil because of
mm-hmm.
the space considerations.
Oh,
But cost-wise, they don't cost that much.
I see.
You know, when you
Great.
if you go for example, to the Bellingham Public Library, all their desks where you check out now have counter loops.
Hmm.
So if there's a hearing aid with a telecoil, you can activate your telecoil and have a conversation with the person behind the counter, and you will hear a really good sound.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Well, Larry, I want to thank you for coming today and giving the excellent presentation. I think we've all learned so much about this, and then talking about your own experience and the people that you know with hearing aids and dealing with impaired hearing. It's been wonderful, very, very informative.
Thank you
Very
very
much
much for
appreciate you coming. Yeah, thank you.
thank you for having me, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, and have a good Thanksgiving.